and I'm going to pass this one over. It's just a list of the various software programs available in our regional IT. A list of all the sites that we're in now. Again, this will be available to you. It doesn't make sense to read it tonight. And before we move to facility, I wondered if Chris Stevens, Chris, would you want to make a comment on?
Forgot Dr. Peters, and it's almost 7:30. I know.
Can you hear me? We've been doing this since about 1998. This is really difficult.
I've spoken for 20 minutes.
We have grown to 17 facilities. We just recently did 5 facilities that cross about a 750-mile radius from Billings down here, central Wyoming, and back up to Northeast Montana. And so lots of activity there. It is somewhat unique, and we're proud of the network as a whole is proud of the value, both financial and clinically, that it brings. It's unique in that the organizations share clinical content, and what that really means is the speed of implementation, the ease of implementation, and then the overall values are realized very quickly. So I think a quick example of that is just meaningful use. All facilities, except the ones that we just signed, already achieved meaningful use and are successful in receiving those fundings. And then I just end by saying that it's also a unique model because it provides a support structure that's very in-depth. It allows support in the communities, not like what you traditionally get from IT services. So it's face-to-face. We get personal with those communities, and it allows us to bring value and relationships with people.
Luke, are we, is our projector on the death spiral, or?
It's not our, it's the bus. We need a bowl. We've got a spare that we brought. Yeah.
I'm going to continue, if that's all right, and we will have these slides available to you if we don't get this working. I wanted to talk a little bit about our facility experience next. We have brought into our facility work 2 concepts. One's called healing environment, where we really can bring principles of design that create safer environments and more healing environments for our patients and their families. The other concept is called evidence-based design, which was pioneered by a firm in Texas, and they've actually worked with the Institute for Healthcare Improvement on how evidence-based design can also enhance safety in facilities. The Pebble project is something Mitch has been very active in terms of how one can benchmark and really focus on quality and safety and cost effectiveness as one does facility design. We have really an extensive experience of our own with facility projects in recent years. I think Mitch has managed about $200 million of facility projects since about 2005, including projects at Beartooth Billings Clinic, Stillwater Billings Clinic, Livingston coming up, and then smaller projects in some of the rural facilities. This would be the facility finished in 2011, Beartooth Billings Clinic. And I'd like to point out that Beartooth Billings Clinic in 2012 was named by the National Rural Health Association as the Hospital of the Year. It's a great facility, but it's just an outstanding group of people and staff. This is the facility that we finished in 2012 with Stillwater Billings Clinic. And I should also add that in both cases, Mitch brought those in under budget. So we feel very good about the experience we have working with architects and with contractors. Mitch, would you like to say a brief word?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I got to thank you guys for being in such a beautiful place, which you already know. Thank you for sharing I'd like to talk about a process tonight about these new facilities is that you truly want to build a state-of-the-art architects and engineers, and we go through the design of these facilities, we literally test everything we're doing. It can be exhausting at times, but the reason for testing it is we want to compare it to other facilities, and we want to use that data for making sure that we're reducing errors, we're providing a safe environment for our patients. We want to make sure that the employees have a good place to work and that they enjoy the place to work. And by creating these state-of-the-art facilities that can take us into the future is it's very very welcoming. I think some of the Beartooth folks will talk about that. The other thing we include in our facility committees is technologists. As you know, that technology can change so quick, but we include them in our design so we can understand if it's not already out, is it coming out in a couple of years, so we can be prepared so that these spaces can be flexible.
And I did want to add, the facilities that we have worked on have been replacing, 40 and 50-year-old facilities. They've been really critically important to the communities where these facilities are being built. But at the end of the day, it's all about high-quality patient care and service. And it meant a lot to me that Linda Harris from the Beartooth Board and Kelly Evans, the CEO there, would come over today, and I wanted to ask them to make just a brief comment if they would. If we can find them. There we go.
Thanks for having us. I'm Linda Harris. I am a longtime board member of Beartooth Buildings Clinic. I was part of the negotiations, so tonight is bringing back all kinds of memories because we went through a very similar process than what you are going through as well. But at the end of the day, it was very clear to us who our partner was going to be, and that was Women's Clinic. They brought to us the information systems, medical records. The shared governance was very important to our board. Their expertise in the critical access hospital arena around financing was very important, but most important to us was the vision for rural healthcare. It came down at the end of the day to the present was very important, but we also wanted to be as assured as we could be as to what it was going to look like 10 years from now. So I think that, as you can imagine, we are very happy with our partnership. We continue to grow it. It has evolved over time, and they have brought to the table and allowed us to provide quality care to our community.
Thanks so much for having us here tonight. I'm Kelly Evans. I'm the CEO of Beartooth Buildings Clinic. And first of all, I want to tell you how much I appreciate the road that you're on. This is such, as Linda said, it's so similar to have a community come together and create a journey to deliver health care to your community. And we too have these public meetings, and they're kind of difficult, and we're up here talking about things, but your presence here will mean very much to your community going forward, and I applaud your transparency at bringing the community together to the committee that organized this. So yes, we are partners with Buildings Clinic, and we were driven by the same process of community preference. And just to kind of highlight a few things with maybe a little more slant on the critical access hospital is first and foremost, Buildings Clinic was about patient safety and quality of care. And so what we're doing is taking what their initiatives are and driving it to a rural level with their assistance. The pieces that Chris talked about for the information systems and what Mitch just talked about building design, that does not come naturally. To create that atmosphere in a 48,000 or 30,000 square foot building requires a lot of thought processes because the resources are different in a rural facility. The staffing is different, and how you will receive the patients is just a little bit different in a rural area. So having that expertise to translate that into quality of care in a sustainable model is just a critical piece of this, and we spent a lot of time working through that. The management of critical access hospital, as Nick pointed out a little bit earlier, a prospective payment hospital is paid differently than a critical access hospital, and you need to have the expertise to come back and understand that so that you can create a model that your community can can invest in a sustainable model. And that kind of experience comes through years. I've been at Beartooth personally for 22 years, and we've been a critical access hospital since 2000. And it's just layer upon layer of understanding reimbursement and then translating that into a model of care that you will be proud of and have a hand on the steering wheel of your community and your healthcare going forward. So that can happen through the shared governance model where the community remains involved to get what you want out of your healthcare system and bringing the expertise from a larger healthcare system, just as Billings Clinic is working with Mayo, we work with Billings Clinic. So I applaud you on your process and the importance of the investment that you're making in healthcare for Big Sky in years to come.
Thank you both, Kelly and Linda. So to go over the proposal quickly, and we have given the committee more detail, we are proposing a critical access hospital along with a clinic and an area for procedures and ambulatory surgery of some sort. We think this will require 3 to 5 acres. We'd start with 4 inpatient beds, shelled to add 8, and depending on the location that's finalized, we would have the ability in the future to expand by as much as about 50%, starting with 30,000 total square feet. West Yellowstone Clinic building at about 3,000, and a construction and planning committee would be formed to guide the design and construction process, supported by Mitch and his team. These are conceptual renderings at this point. Obviously, until we know where a partnership might or might not be going, it wouldn't make a lot of sense to get into too much detail. But based on our experiences in these other communities, particularly Stillwater and Beartooth, these are conceptual renderings of a couple different ways that a facility as just described might look. The scope of services would be the inpatient services, and in a critical access hospital, obviously there are a number of inpatient services not provided, but there are a number that can be provided very well. The emergency room, of course, for triage, which we hope would be very, very helpful in terms of not as many patients requiring ambulance trips, visiting specialists, lab, telemedicine, pharmacy if needed, imaging services, a branch clinic in West Yellowstone, and helicopter pads in both communities in case more serious injuries need more rapid transport. We would like to integrate current local medical providers into all this planning. We strongly believe in physician leadership, as I've emphasized, and we have had some discussions with them, and I think they have interest in further discussions depending on the decisions made by the committee and by this community. We do believe in a shared governance model. We do believe in local ownership. And we think that if there were 9 to 13 members, so to speak, on a board of directors, and Billings Clinic had 2 of those seats, and of course West Yellowstone would have seats as well, that this would be a very nice way to create strong governance, because we would be starting a new board here. But I think with the right support, there's a lot of talent at Big Sky and West Yellowstone, and that could be done. As in our other relationships, we would employ the CEO with reporting relationships to the local board of directors. And we do think a local community foundation being formed, which would be its own foundation, but with support initially by Jim and his team, would be very, very helpful in getting this project launched. And I'll just mention again our real confidence in that $5 million figure. Financing, $22 million total project cost. We would invest $5 million from the Billings Clinic, and that would make us a 25%, so to speak, capital investor in the project. We would see $5 million coming out of philanthropy. We would seek a low-interest loan from USDA, would be our first choice. We have worked with USDA in 2 other communities very successfully now. We have talked to them about this potential project, and we think it's very doable with the timeline that is being discussed. Usually you have some participation by local banks in part of the debt issuance. We think it would be good if there could be some money from the tax board here for the first several years to help us, because it does take into year 4 to break even, and it takes into year 3 to get cash flows to be positive. And cash flows are slightly different than the total bottom line because they do not include things like depreciation. I'll also mention that USDA will also consider funding some of the shortfall in the first 2 or 3 years. So that would be another way that we could try to fund the gap in the first few years. Our pro formas, which we've shared with the committee, do show a total 5-year bottom line that's positive, even though it takes into year 3 and 4 to get to break even. Timeline, if the decision is made this summer and land is finalized and we begin design this fall, there would be, and of course we've got the USDA process, there could be groundbreaking spring, summer of 2014. Construction, in our experience of this facility of this size, would take about 14 months. And then I just wanted to emphasize a few things about the Billings Clinic. When we take something on, we take it on with a fair amount of commitment. And we have received the #1 safety rating from Consumer Reports, the first one they ever did. We have had Healthgrades recognize us a number of times as a distinguished hospital for clinical excellence. Truven Healthcare Analytics used to be called Solucent, and then after that they were Thomson Reuters. We have been named twice a top 100 hospital by this organization, which uses publicly available Medicare data. We just had a representative from Truven visit our campus, and he went over all the criteria. We are the only institution in Montana to have received in 2013 their top 100 award. Magnet designation, I mentioned, that's a nursing designation. It's very rigorous, very difficult to achieve. We have achieved it, and then we have been redesignated, again, the only institution in this area that has received that designation. Since 2008, we've been in a National Cancer Institute program on community cancer centers, which has allowed our patients to have access to clinical trials not otherwise available. That's been very, very positive. It has brought other services to cancer patients too, in terms of navigation, coordination, and support in addition to the clinical care which they get. There's a Women's Choice Award given, and 2 years running we've been chosen by them Best Hospitals for Patient Experience. AARP in 2013 named us a hospital safety superstar and actually had me speak at a national conference they put on in Washington, D.C. And we've also received A rating for hospital safety on 2 occasions from the Leapfrog Group. And I'm not going to read the rest of these, but I call it the body of work. It's not like we go out and grab all these criteria and shoot for them, but I think we have said we want to be best in nation at quality, safety, and service, and we've worked very hard to achieve that. I would finish by saying I believe we've proven that we are committed partners in the other communities where we've worked. We do believe in local community ownership and governance, but with our involvement, help, and support, we really do put quality, safety, service, and value at the top of the list. We've got a great track record on physician recruitment and retention. We really believe in physician clinical integration with the emphasis on physicians also being involved in leadership of organizations, i.e. on boards, as medical directors. And in the case of the Billings Clinic, our organization is committed to a physician CEO. We've got proven success in securing financing and success in actually building and opening state-of-the-art critical access hospital and clinics. And I think we really stick with things when we commit to them. We stay with our partners, and we've had a little thick and thin over the years with the various things that happen. So we feel good about the proposal we're putting on the table. We feel good about the role we could play as a partner. And we know you've got a difficult decision to make. We'll be very respectful wherever that lands. But we think we think we're really a pretty darn good option. So we hope you'll give us some serious consideration. There will be more information available. We'll post this presentation because it was a fair amount of detail. We have some handouts that will be available at the end of this meeting. And Jack, do we have time for a few questions? Yes.
I have a financial question, proposal. You're going to put in $5 million from Billings Clinic. You're talking about $5 million in foundation charity. It's a $22 million thing. You're short $12 million. So where is that going to come from? And if you're going to bond it, who's on the hook for the bond?
The funding would come from the USDA, which has a fairly long track record over the years of funding rural health care. And that would be where the other $12 million would come from. We have used that funding at Stillwater Billings Clinic. It's what we'll close on in September in Livingston. We used that funding in Beartooth. We used HUD over in Columbus at Stillwater Billings Clinic. And that's secure funding. They do want you to perform. And I should add that we believe that the board governance structure we've proposed, the pro formas we've put together, that we would meet those pro formas and we would be, as I mentioned, over 5 years in the black, and that we would be paying those dollars back to USDA as agreed. So that's our belief. And we have shown that to be the case in the other communities where we've done this. Other questions? Yes.
Financing, I'm sure the local banks are happy that you use them to help with the debt issuance, but does that have a fairly generic application? I mean, or is it complicated, and do the local banks really have expertise in USDA debt issuance?
Yeah, the question was the role of local banks. They might wish to have the opportunity, but do they have expertise in that sort of thing? That's a very good question. Not all local banks want to, and USDA, for example, does have certain criteria. It is somewhat complicated, but we have experience doing that. If we did not find a local bank in Big Sky, we would be looking in this region, whether it's Bozeman or wherever. But you almost always have some presence from one of the commercial banks of a small portion of the lending. Kyle's the expert. Yes?
Question on financing. On the security for the USDA loan, my understanding that Livingston has a hospital taxing district, hospital district taxing power, and anticipate that for USDA, that Big Sky would have to vote this hospital district taxing power to backstop that loan?
I think the question is, you have an understanding that Livingston has a tax district where they can put dollars forward through taxation?
Right, what would be required?
Right, and that is not the case. We have not used tax dollars there. The other part of the question you asked is, would some type of a local tax district separate from your tax board have to be formed? I think the answer to that is no, but this would be all part of the detail that would be worked out if you were to choose to approach this through the local board here, really being the owner, so to speak, with our partnership. There was a question there, yes.
Let me use the microphone.
A couple of questions. You've given us a timetable, which it sounds like you would start next year, but you say there has to be $5 million contributed by the community, and that may not be possible when if $5 million is not raised, would you still be starting next year?
Yeah, and I'm going to defer a little bit to Jim on that. It's a very good question because even if $5 million were raised, some of those dollars come in, for example, over 3 years. So we would have to address all of that appropriately as part of the philanthropic campaign. But it would be our goal to get started, if possible, in the timeline that we have shown. And in some cases, the actual dollar expenditures that are being put out come to fruition, some of them at least, when the facility opens. So,
I have one other question, and that relates also to financing, and that is, I understand it's a $21 or $22 million facility that you're talking about. Your skin in the game, I guess, is $5 million. Big Sky puts $5 million, and the rest is coming from, I guess, money being provided by somebody who's giving a loan that somebody has to sign on. I assume it's not going to be Billings Clinic, and in which case I ask, why, what is to prevent Billings Clinic if they decide, well, we don't get enough referrals out of this or whatever, from just walking away from this whole thing in 3 years or 5 years and leaving the community holding the bag with all that debt?
I think the question was well heard. First of all, I'm going to address the referral issues. We're not doing this for referrals. Period. As a matter of fact, we would see referrals being a less likely result of a partnership with Big Sky than what we've seen in Red Lodge and Columbus, where we had normal referral patterns there to start with. So we're doing this because we got asked to come over and look at a situation where we were asked, could local health care be advanced here? That's our main reason to do this. As far as the skin in the game from the clinic, we think that aligns incentives. The loan from USDA would be secured by the new board of directors of Big Sky Healthcare, whatever the name becomes, which we would be a 25% roughly minority part of. And with our support and partnership, we would deliver on paying those loans. And I have tried to emphasize, we're in 10 communities now. We've been in Red Lodge since 2002. We don't walk away after 4 or 5 years. We've been in communities where there's been a rough financial year. We've stuck with it through thick and thin, and that's how we do business. So you've got to decide, is that a credible, believable statement from me or not? And by the way, you could have a scenario where somebody else pays for the whole thing, and they might have financial reasons 5 years later to look at things differently too. I don't think the question is essentially different. It has different flavors, but I think that we're not going to do this if we're not committed to staying with it for the long haul. And related to that, I will say, if there's another reason we're interested in this, is that Big Sky is growing again. The resort communities in Colorado all have excellent healthcare facilities. The growth of healthcare in Big Sky over 5 and 10 and 15 and 20 years is going to be outstanding. We would love to be part of that.
The presentation is very interesting, but I wonder, as you begin to operationalize your model, if you're selected in 3 or 4 years, I think about the use of helicopters to take patients to that next level of care. Could you explain to us the comparability, disadvantage, or advantage of, would they logically go from here to Billings, Bozeman, or how would that work?
Well, as with any other patient need that couldn't be served here, that patient and that patient's physician will make those decisions. Generally speaking, any services that could be provided in Bozeman would be the destination. And there are particularly Medicare regulations about not bypassing the nearest place where the service that patient could be needed. We would not do this with any designs that any kind of transport like that would be bypassing the local facility that can provide the best care. And that's a strong commitment that we are making.
I think your slide showed that Columbus was built for $14 million and Red Lodge for $18, and those were they were 1 and 3 years ago or something like that. And that's for 48 to 32,000 square foot facility. So the 22 proportionally seems high. 22 million seems high for 30,000. Is there something that's driving that cost structure, or are you just trying to be conservative?
I'm going to let Mitch answer that because he put a lot of thought into why the cost per square foot might be a bit different in 2014 than it was when those were constructed.
Well, some little things, but they do add up. One, we did put in a big sky factor, and we had a percentage for that. But we also have two facilities, one in West Charleston, one here, so we have two different mobilizations. But then the other thing is we do have medical equipment, MRI here, which can be very substantial in cost. And so when you add up the equipment and the building, it's not really about the square footage is different. So when you add up those other elements, that's what's total. Is the MRI being driven by heating or?
Yes. Having access to the technology right here. Why the MRI?
Yeah.
We just want to have state-of-the-art imaging services right here at the moment. The local physicians have asked for that as well. Next.
Well, very good questions, and I think
We've had a lot of questions on financing, but as I understand it, saying that there'd be an LLC formed and such, and that's who would be dealing with USDA on the loan. The building would be collateral. You're not asking for board of directors to be personal guarantees or anything like that. So it's much the way many of our other businesses work in the community.
correct. There would not be individual risk or responsibility for any board members. And I think the governance structure could be an LLC. It could be a 501c3. Obviously, the organization would have various appropriate insurances, and there's not going to be individual guarantees by any board members given. That's how this is in all the other communities we've worked with.
Do you anticipate having a medical director who is ultimately responsible for coordination between West Yellowstone and Big Sky, and referral patterns and transportation and patient triage and that sort of thing?
Yeah, the question was, do we anticipate a medical director who might coordinate activities between the two committees as well as ambulance transport, et cetera? Yes, we do. And there's some complexities I don't yet fully understand in terms of how many ambulance companies do serve the area. There's a little more knowledge about that I would need to know. But first of all, we believe in physician leadership. If physicians are very committed to this enterprise and feel like they're part of it, and that doesn't have to mean employment, but it could, and if they have roles in leadership like medical directorship, it helps in many, many ways to have patient care be delivered more effectively, for care to be coordinated, and it gives the community a confidence that this is a place where very high quality care can be delivered. So the basic answer is yes.
Jack? One more question? Last call?
Well, thank you all again. These materials will be available, both some of them at the back of the room on the website as noted. If I could just close by introducing Dr. Bill Peters. Bill, would you stand? 38 years in OB/GYN practice in Bozeman. He's been part of the Billings Clinic, but doing all his work in Bozeman now for a number of years, and has really helped us coordinate maternity care and GYN care across our region, including spending some time with our facilities back on the other side of the state. So Bill, thank you for being here. Thank you all very much once again. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We all you back here in our chairs in 8 minutes. 8 minutes.
I think I stole 2 minutes, maybe.
He thinks that, one question I didn't want to ask everybody, are the physicians employed by Billings Clinic or by the local LLC once it's formed?
Well, you know, the LLC, I don't know if that's what it'll be or a 501c3. In our case, we're a 501c3, and we don't have a separate structure for physicians. The physicians are employed by